As the first daughter in an extremely conservative family that scrupulously observed all ancient traditions, she realized from an early age that she was not the child her parents expected. The burden of being a daughter and not a son was felt not only by her, but also by her mother, who endured severe criticism from her family for giving birth to a girl. The rejection didn't end there. In an act of sadness and frustration, her mother blamed Gabriella for the problems at home. When her brother was born a year later, the differences became even more apparent. The boy was the center of the family's attention, receiving love and care, while Gabriella experienced the bitter taste of loneliness. She grew up believing it was her duty to give up things for her brother's sake: new clothes, tastier food, even the comfort of a warm blanket on cold winter days. While her brother slept comfortably, Gabriella huddled on a bed with a thin mattress covered with old worn blankets. Before we continue with the story, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to us. Also, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. We're asking this because when it came time to go to high school, her brother was enrolled in a reputable, private, and very expensive school. Gabriella never dreamed of such a privilege. Despite her growing bitterness, she had an unquenchable thirst for knowledge that she could not ignore. With a determination she had never shown before, she begged her father to let her continue her studies. However, her requests were only met with ridicule and contempt. "Why waste money on a girl?" my father would say, expressing his outdated views. "Isn't it enough that you went to primary school? That's something you should be grateful to your parents for all your life. Get a job to pay for yourself and then get married. Understood?" His words were direct and very hurtful. Even though she hated being ignored, she didn't stop dreaming and fighting for a future in which she would decide her own fate. At the age of 16, Gabriella found a job in a fabric factory. She divided her time between being tired from work during the day and studying secretly at night, away from the critical eyes of her family. Books were her silent friends, and the knowledge she acquired was her secret weapon. Learning wasn't a crime, but in her home, every page she read was like a small act of rebellion against expectations. For 3 years, Gabriella fought with all her strength. She worked hard in the factory during the day and studied with the utmost care and attention at night. This effort paid off when, at the age of 19, she passed the high school leaving examination. This was her achievement without anyone's help, only with her unwavering will to survive. Thanks to this, Gabriella changed her attitude, deciding that she would no longer allow herself to be treated as inferior just because she was a woman. One quiet night, she secretly left home seeking freedom and began to live on her own. Living on your own wasn't easy, and at the beginning of this new stage, Gabriella found a job in a restaurant. There she met and married Elijah, the only son of the restaurant owner, a young man who had just left the army and was ready to return to college. Elijah was the first to truly compliment her, which touched her heart deeply, and their mutual fondness quickly turned into love. After less than a year of dating, they decided to get married secretly and live together in Gabriella's small apartment. However, their marriage did not remain a secret for long. When Elijah's mother, who was also Gabriella's boss, discovered the marriage, she was shocked and furious. "I hired you because I felt sorry for you, but you married my son behind my back? Do you think I'll accept that I'll let you into my family after all this? No way. Get out and forget about your paycheck. You've only brought us trouble. My son could have been with the most beautiful girls at university, building a successful future, and not with someone like you." Gabriella, horrified, replied, "Madam, I did not seduce your son. We just fell in love with each other. You are from another world. You and Elijah are not compatible, and I won't stop until I separate you from him," my mother-in-law said, turning and walking away. Gabriella was shocked by her words and the injustice of the situation. Before she could protest, her mother-in-law fired her without paying her for the work she had done. Later, the mother-in-law burst into the couple's apartment, blinded by fury, destroying everything in her path. Gabrielle was terrified until Elijah came and saw the chaos. "Mom, enough is enough. It was my decision too, not just Gabriella's," he said, holding her hands gently. "You're going to be a grandma." The mother-in-law froze for a moment, but then the anger returned with new accusations. "What if this child is not even yours?" she accused, not hiding her suspicions. Elijah looked at his mother and said confidently, "This child is mine, I'm sure of it." Hearing this, my mother-in-law fell to the ground, crying and screaming, "How could you? You had a bright future ahead of you. Are you going to destroy all our sacrifices? Gabriella found herself in a marriage that was burdened from the very beginning with ill will and rejection from her husband's mother. Elijah promised that when the financial situation improved and he had some more money, they would organize a real wedding celebration. Despite the difficult financial situation, lack of work, and distance from Gabriella's parents, she told him, "I am happy with our life, as we have it." Her words were sincere, although deep down she felt that she was hiding part of the truth. Elijah's mother-in-law finally thought it through and didn't want anyone with her last name to grow up in poverty after all. She decided that Gabrielle and Elijah should live with her. Pregnant and tired, Gabriella divided her time between household chores and hard work in the restaurant. Her mother-in-law was constantly complaining, shouting and saying that Gabriella was nothing more than a lazy person. She thought it was absurd that Gabriella complained about how much work she had to do every day. She endured all this for over 5 years. Sometimes she cried in secret, wondering why she had to go through all this. Still, she found comfort in her husband. He was her support, holding her hand tenderly and offering her comfort. Gabriella's life became a real whirlwind when her mother-in-law, deceived by an investment scammer, lost all her savings. She was distraught and didn't know what to do. "How could I let this happen? All my money, all my savings, my God." "Mom, how could you be deceived? What we gonna do now?" Elijah said desperately. Gabrielle then tried to calm the situation. "Elijah, stay calm. Your mother didn't do it on purpose. She was deceived. And although it's not much, I have some savings that will help us rent a modest apartment in the basement of the building. So don't treat your mother like that." However, the mother-in-law became irritated. "How dare you talk to my son like that? It's all your fault. If you weren't an ordinary woman from the periphery, we wouldn't be in this situation now. We would have a decent place to live." Gabriella could have been angry at such harsh words, but instead she felt deep sadness. She had a daughter to take care of, and she couldn't let her emotions get the better of her. So with the money she had saved, Gabriella rented a small basement apartment, determined to build a new life for herself and her family. After some time, my mother-in-law became ill, and her husband worked 2 jobs, trying to improve his financial situation. Gabriella did not remain idle either. She started working additionally at home to help with finances. This is how they fought for over 10 years. The struggle to keep up with the bills was so difficult that the love her husband felt for her had long since faded. Despite this, Gabriella got used to this difficult life. She thought that if she could raise her daughter as best as she could, she would be ready to face any obstacle. Whenever her daughter wanted or needed something, she would do anything to get it, even if she had to starve for it. Gabriella's mother-in-law never missed an opportunity to express her dissatisfaction. "Don't you think you're spoiling her too much? You should pay more attention to your husband instead of sacrificing yourself for this girl." Gabriella replied with equal firmness, "I'm sure my husband would agree with me. She works day and night to give our daughter the best life possible, and that's something you as a grandmother should also appreciate." The mother-in-law replied in a voice full of contempt, "How dare you speak to me like that? We are here because of your poor and deprived family." Gabriella was not intimidated and replied, "As I recall, we are in this situation because you were deceived." After Gabriella's words, the woman became angry and started destroying things throughout the house. Gabriella then took her daughter and left the house, waiting for her mother-in-law to decide to abandon her immature and unnecessary behavior. Even after this argument, my mother-in-law pretended to be sick and went to sleep, trying to arouse sympathy from her son, who had already returned from work. On top of all this, Elijah, who had always been by her side, began to criticize Gabriella for not taking proper care of her mother. "Mom told me that you were rude to her. I really didn't expect that from you," he said. Gabrielle, feeling unfairly treated, immediately replied, "Elijah, am I being rude to her? She never misses an opportunity to humiliate me and criticize me for anything, and we are in this situation because of her fault." He tried to de-escalate the situation with a gentler tone. "Okay, Gabrielle, look at her health. You have to be more patient." This made them grow even more distant from each other. Despite these challenges, Gabriella continued to care for her family and marriage, acquiring a new home through her hard work while their daughter was in high school. During the move, her mother-in-law belittled her contribution, attributing her success solely to Elijah. "You should be grateful for my son's efforts. Gabriel, even though he's with you, managed to pull himself out and get us out of this hole you dragged us into." Gabriella knew that her efforts were also crucial in purchasing the house, but she preferred to keep this knowledge to herself when organizing her new place to live. Accustomed to being underestimated and to the rudeness of her mother-in-law, Gabriella became immune to these insults, but she still hoped that the situation would improve. However, this hope was shattered when her marriage began to fall apart. It all started when Elias found a job selling products for a company that built houses and buildings. "You know, Gabriella, the guys from the office are meeting to discuss some things," he said. "Again?" "This is the third meeting this week," Gabriella replied with a tone of distrust in her voice. "Try to understand, the company has acquired many new customers. It needs all my attention," he concluded. However, Gabriella knew that these outings included drinking and hanging out with other women. She was very angry that he didn't come home and stayed out all night. Whenever she said she was angry about it, he would get angry. "Gabriella, can't you just once appreciate the effort I'm putting in for our family? Looking at the way you dress only makes me more motivated to work. You dress so casually, as if you weren't my wife at all." Elijah's harmful comments hurt Gabrielle to the core. After all, she gave the best years of her life to this family. One difficult night, after hearing her husband's harsh words, she went to the bathroom and washed her face, but she didn't even know whether her face was wet with water or tears. One morning, after a night of drinking, Elijah woke up and went to work, still a little drunk. A few hours later, he called her and said in an authoritative tone, "Gabrielle, I need you to bring me the contract I forgot at home. It's on the bedside table. I need him in 10 minutes. Come quickly." Gabriella barely had time to dress appropriately. She grabbed her purse and contract, called a taxi, something she rarely did, and hurried to her husband's office. When she got there, all worried, she asked about him and saw Elijah approaching her with a look of shame on his face. "Gabriella, what is that outfit? Do you want to embarrass me?" At that moment, an elegantly dressed young man approached them and caught Elijah's attention. "What are you doing here? You didn't have an important contract to sign? The head of the company we are waiting for has already arrived." "Yes, I know, I'll go there in a moment and get the contract," Elijah said, trying to stay calm, but his nervousness was obvious. "Oh, you forgot the contract at home, didn't you? Take it, here it is," Gabriella said, still not fully understanding the situation. He simply took the document, ignoring her comment, and when the others asked, "Is this your wife?" Elijah replied without a hint of embarrassment, "Who, her? She's just an employee we hired to help clean up." Gabriella felt as if she had been stabbed in the back. She was ignored as a wife and portrayed as if she was nothing more than a domestic worker. After that, he left her and went back to work without any sign of remorse. Gabrielle, still motionless, unable to believe what had just happened, listened to her husband's conversation with his friends in the next room. "He must be rich if he even has a housemaid. That's right, I almost mistook her for his wife. They're crazy. How can you live with such a woman? My wife is very busy now and I only have eyes for her. Look at the way she dresses and her hair. I already talked to my wife to leave," said Elijah, and his colleagues continued. "She is just your employee. He's not your type at all, but you need to secure this contract for your promotion to manager to be successful. Your wife must be very proud of you." The truth is, Gabriella was devastated. She returned home sobbing and, as if hypnotized, stopped at a clothing store and spent the rest of the day buying new clothes to feel better. When she returned home, Elijah constantly criticized her. "It doesn't matter what you wear, you're still the same on the inside. And how dare you spend my money on these clothes? Are you crazy? Give these things back. You embarrassed me at work," he said, showing that he had no respect for her. However, Gabriella, with a heavy heart and a wounded soul, refused to return the clothes. He continued taunting her, saying she looked like a beggar. The mother-in-law also joined in the argument. "My son is absolutely right. Look at you. You dress like a low-level person, even though you are not. At least try to look respectable with our name." Gabriella felt such intense anger and desperation that her body trembled. She was already used to the way Elijah's family treated her, but she had her limits, especially in front of her daughter. She always remembered the saying that a daughter ends up living her mother's life, and her greatest fear was that her daughter would have the sad future she had. Suddenly, as if it were the simplest thing in the world, Elijah said, "Gabriel, enough. I have taken this marriage as far as it can go. I don't want anything with you anymore. I want a divorce. You better find another place to live." "Are you crazy? I brought more to this house than you did," Gabriella said. Yes, but the fact is that I am with another woman and she is pregnant. I want her to live here. She's on my level. Gabriella was shocked by Elijah's boldness. How can you dare to cheat on me and still act like you're right? She promised herself that she would not leave this house she helped build and bring to life. How can I just let another woman take my place? In an act of cruelty, the mother-in-law threw Gabriella's clothes into the garbage. You are disturbing the future of my son, who has finally seen the light. You weren't even able to give him a male heir, she said. At that moment, Gabriella's daughter, who had just returned from school, witnessed this scene, and with eyes full of tears, she begged her mother not to let this happen. Why do you have to endure this? You should leave your dad who cheats on you and your grandma who doesn't understand anything. Why do you have to suffer so much? I can't watch you take it all. When her mother-in-law heard what her granddaughter said, she became furious. You taught your daughter to be so impudent, she accused Gabriella. Where did she learn to be so bold? Your mother must have taught her this secretly. The girl, even more irritated, replied, I hate you. You only know how to treat my mother badly. And now you're trying to hide Daddy because you think his mistress's baby will be a boy. Then the mother-in-law said with a sneer, Exactly, you little good-for-nothing. You don't continue our family line. Gabriella stopped and shouted, I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Valentina. This house is as much ours as it is yours. We won't be fired for mistakes we didn't make. Elijah seemed ready to answer, but Gabrielle wouldn't let him. Enough of this nonsense. Let's get this divorce sorted out quickly. However, my daughter and I will only leave this house when you give me half the value of the house and agree to pay alimony. Otherwise, I am going to a lawyer immediately to resolve this in court. Elijah replied, You are greedy, aren't you? It's not greed. It's my rights, because I helped get more than half the value of this house, Gabriella said with anger in her eyes. Then she concluded in an ironic tone, You're right to demand a divorce after cheating, and I'm right to demand my rights. Do this, and you won't have any problems with me in court. The mother-in-law intervened. My son, don't worry about her threats. Just throw her out with that stupid girl now, make a new family. You have to get rid of them. At the height of the argument, Valentina confronted her father. Dad, I won't accept this. I can go to your work and tell everyone who you really are, she threatened, making Elijah realize the seriousness of his actions. He shouted, How dare you speak to your father like that? My greatest regret was supporting an ungrateful daughter like you. Gabriella, feeling her daughter's pain, intervened. Don't talk to Valentina like that. She never relied on your money, neither for food nor for education, she defended, protecting her daughter's dignity. Elijah, who was obviously counting on Gabriella's compliance in signing the divorce papers, was surprised by her decision and did not expect her to demand her rights before signing anything. Contrary to all expectations, he transferred the promised money to her account that same night. After the divorce, Gabriella went through a long period of sadness, but she knew she had to find a way to earn money regularly to support herself and pay for Valentina's education. So she looked for an employment agency that would recognize domestic skills as professional qualifications. In the following months, she devoted herself to working as a housewife, accepting one-day or short-term assignments. Her dedication and attention to detail quickly earned her recognition for excellence in her work. One day, the agency manager called her in for an interview. Normally, I wouldn't do this with someone new, he said, but you're an exception. We have a very demanding client. He has already fired 10 of our best employees. I thought of recommending you. All you need to do is clean the house 3 times a week and cook. The salary is 3 times what you earn now. Will you accept? Needing money, and fearing that her ex-husband would stop paying alimony, and considering the costs that Valentina's studies would entail, Gabriella did not hesitate to accept the offer. However, when she reached the house of Omar, her new client, she found herself in a dilemma. The residence was spotlessly clean, even more so than many of the hotels she had passed through. With everything cleaned up, she became anxious, not wanting to miss out on the chance for a higher salary. She started looking for something to do, cleaned the curtains, washed the sheets, disinfected the lamps, and organized the fridge. She did it all so quickly that she still had time to spare. Later, Gabriella went to the kitchen. After going to the market and selecting fresh ingredients, she began preparing meals, having no idea of her employer's preferences or the amount of spices he liked. Gabriella was determined to make this new beginning work not only for herself, but also to build a better future for Valentina. Gabriella looked at herself in the mirror, straightening her work clothes and noticing the concerned look on her face as she considered the money she had made. The sum seemed excessive for the short amount of work she had done. With this in mind, she wrote a carefully written letter and left it for her employer. In the letter, she mentioned that if he wanted a special dish, all he had to do was leave a note in the fridge and she would prepare the meal and leave it ready for him. Omar was always absent when Gabrielle was working, so they rarely saw each other. Contrary to Gabriella's previous concerns, the employer did not express any dissatisfaction. She continued her work, trying harder than necessary to make sure the pay was deserved. One day, during her regular workday, Gabriella noticed a date marked on the calendar at Omar's house. There was a reminder there, but it didn't correspond to any day she normally worked. This made her think about the significance of this date and whether she would need to prepare anything special for the event. Maybe Omar was planning to welcome someone to his residence. Inspired by the idea that she should prepare for the upcoming event, Gabriella decided to use the previous night, even though she was busy with other things, to prepare a meal. In the kitchen, which had become her refuge of happiness, she lost track of time as she cooked, immersed in the pleasure of preparing food with love. While Gabriella was focused on cooking, the owner of the house returned. Surprised that she had lost track of time, she hurried to explain, "Sorry, I was so focused on cooking that I didn't notice the time passing. I'm about to finish and leave. Have you eaten yet? Do you want me to prepare the table?" "No, I'm fine. But why did you cook so much food?" Omar asked with a bit of excitement. She replied, "Well, I noticed that tomorrow is an important date on your calendar, so I thought I would prepare this meal." She realized that he had brought bags of groceries, which suggested that maybe he wanted to cook for that date himself. With her head full of doubts, Gabriella didn't know what to do. Fortunately, or maybe not, the employer didn't bring up the subject again. "Okay, just get everything sorted out and you're good to go," he said, heading to his bedroom. Gabriella stayed there, in the middle of the kitchen full of delicious smells and confusing thoughts, trying to understand what had happened. She was afraid that this food misunderstanding might cost her her job, but to her surprise, she received no reprimand. With a heavy heart, she went to work the next day, but there was a pleasant surprise waiting for her. A note in the fridge saying, "Thank you for the food." This simple note made her feel very happy, and inspired by this unexpected event, Gabriella cleaned the house and cooked with even more enthusiasm. It was then that she realized, perhaps for the first time, how good doing her homework was for her. The day after the little incident, when Gabriella came to work, she found a note asking her to reduce her meal portions. This started a new form of communication through notes left here and there. Messages such as "The soup was delicious, please leave it warm when I come back," and "Dinner was delicious" became frequent. When Omar brought home a vase of flowers and asked her to take care of it while he was away, Gabriella felt the atmosphere in the house become lighter and happier. This exchange of notes continued for several months. Gabriella began to look forward to the days she had to work, no longer worrying about what to prepare, and she noticed that she smiled more often. Her daughter, noticing these changes, asked, "Mom, are you dating anyone?" "Oh, Valentina, what kind of question is that?" Gabriella replied, surprised. "Well, you seem more animated than usual," Valentina observed. "Oh, please, I just have good days. Is it that weird?" Gabriella said, trying to hide her embarrassment. Okay, Valentina replied, still a bit wary. One morning, Gabriella went to work and noticed that Omar looked like he had the flu. Even though he wasn't feeling well and was at home, he said, "Don't worry, it's just a passing flu. You better go home so you don't get infected." But Gabriella was one of those people who was very concerned about the well-being of others, and she couldn't leave her boss alone in need of help. So she went to the nearest pharmacy, bought some flu medicine, and came back to prepare nutritious chicken soup for him. Before she left a note in the refrigerator instructing him to take medicine and eat soup to recover quickly. The next day, Gabriella received a surprise, some beauty products left as a thank you gift. She felt uncomfortable accepting such a gift and decided to wait until Omar returned to discuss the matter. When he returned home, he was surprised to find Gabriella still there, thinking she had already left. She started the conversation. "Listen, thank you very much for the gifts, but I don't feel comfortable accepting them, and I don't want you to think I didn't appreciate the gesture. Please, Gabrielle, accept them. It's a form of gratitude for the care you showed and the meals you prepared. They're always tasty," he insisted. "I'm glad you like them. Always nice to cook for you," Gabrielle replied politely. "You know, even though the food is great, it doesn't taste the same when you eat it alone. I miss family company, something I haven't experienced in a long time," he said sadly. Thinking for a moment, Gabriella replied, "I understand that perfectly. Food takes on a unique flavor when shared." With a bit of excitement, Omar suggested, "That's why I was thinking. Maybe you'd be willing to have dinner with me one day?" Surprised but flattered, Gabriella replied, "That would be different. I haven't had dinner with a man in a long time since the divorce, but yes, I think I would accept your invitation." Finally, when they finally sat down for dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. During dinner, Gabriella discovered that the date marked on the calendar was the anniversary of Omar's mother's death, and not a romantic commitment as she had previously thought. As the conversation progressed, she realized that Omar was very different from the men she had been with before. "I've never been married, you know. I am older than you and have already experienced many challenges in my youth." "It must have been very difficult," she commented. "Yes, it was. Over the years, I realized that many women were only interested in me for my wealth. This made me choose to live alone." With empathy, Gabriella expressed, "I regret these experiences." Omar continued, "Losing my mother was the hardest moment. That's when I felt the lack of family the most. I can't imagine what it's like to face this alone," Gabriella said. Then he changed the subject a bit. "What about your ex-husband? Gabriella, would he mind if we had dinner together?" Gabriella sighed before answering, "Oh, my ex-husband? We divorced after he cheated on me, so no, he would have no right to an opinion on this." The next morning, Gabriella found a note from Omar inviting her to have dinner together more often. Next to the note was a credit card that she would use to purchase ingredients for her meals. Card in hand, Gabriella considered how to proceed, torn between maintaining professionalism and her feelings for him. Ultimately, she decided it would be most appropriate to return the card with a note emphasizing the importance of maintaining a professional relationship separate from her personal life. The next day, she was scared by the sound of the phone. It was Omar. For a moment, Gabriella feared it might be a call to fire her, but he wanted to talk about something more personal. "You know, Gabriella, I'm not sure what you'll think, but I have to confess my feelings. After getting to know you and hearing your story, I started to feel something I had never felt before. Mr. Omar, as someone who has already been married, I no longer believe in the word never. We started with good feelings towards each other, but people can change over time and you might regret it in the future," Gabriella said. "No, I'm not young anymore and I'm willing to take risks," Omar said. "I want to say that I am completely in love with you and your warm personality. I feel something I've never felt before. I would really like you and your daughter to be part of my family." That's a lot to think about," Gabriella said. "I'm serious. I want to start a new life by your side." Gabrielle, filled with doubt, replied, "I'm afraid to suffer again." Valentina, trying to be supportive, said, "Mom, everyone deserves true happiness." Under the influence of Valentina's words, Gabriella was moved, and after a moment of reflection, she replied, "I accept. I agree to marry you. Not only for myself, but also for Valentina. You don't know how happy this makes me," Omar expressed, clearly relieved and happy. Gabriella was in love like never before and was very excited at the thought of real marriage. "I can't believe I'm choosing a wedding dress," Gabriella exclaimed as she looked through the dresses. When she reached the elegant hotel room to see the reception space, Omar asked for permission. "My love, I have an urgent professional matter to resolve. Can you wait for me here at the hotel? I just need to sign the contract and the person is nearby." "Of course, do what you need to do." "I'll wait here," Gabriella replied understandingly. While walking through the lobby of a luxury hotel, admiring the splendor and beauty around her, Gabriella experienced something unexpected. She met Elijah, her ex-husband, the last person she wanted to see. He appeared suddenly, and upon seeing her face, Gabriella felt a wave of surprise and irritation. "What are you doing in such an elegant hotel? You don't belong here," he sneered, looking at her with a critical eye as if questioning her presence in such a place. "Since when do you go to places like this?" Gabriella didn't hesitate to respond, remaining firm even though she felt hurt. "It's none of your business whether I wear makeup or stay in a fancy hotel. Leave me alone and get on with your life," Elijah insisted, being rude and provocative. "Are you trying to replace me with an older and rich man? Do you think it goes unnoticed? It's obvious you're taking advantage of it." "I'm not taking advantage of anyone. I'm just looking for happiness, which I didn't get when I was with you. Luck or maybe money. My life does not depend on your approval or judgment. What I do now is none of your business. After all, now you have your own wife to worry about. By the way, has she had a baby yet?" Elijah's expression immediately changed from arrogant to fearful as he saw Omar approaching. "Mr. Omar, what are you doing here? "Won't you come in so we can sort out the contract?" he mumbled, embarrassed. Omar noticed the tension in the air and decided to postpone his conversation with Gabriella until later. Looking hard at Gabrielle's ex-husband, he said in a voice that brooked no objection, "I didn't come here for fun, Elijah. I saw you talking to her, and I no longer have any interest in doing business with you." Elijah tried to argue, "But the contract, we were close." Omar interrupted, showing off his engagement ring. "The reason I'm here is different. What you wanted to discuss with me is no longer important, and even if that conversation were to take place, I wouldn't sign this contract with you because your goals don't fit the direction our company is heading." "Mr. Omar, I will lower the prices and meet all your conditions. Please sign the contract. If I can't sign it, it will be a big problem for the company," Elijah said desperately. "If you lower prices, the other calculations don't add up." "Your company's problems don't concern me," Omar said. "And one more thing, if you interfere in my wife's life again, you will have to deal with me. Stay away from her, understood?" Added. Noticing Omar's determination, Elijah tried a different approach. "Gabriel, won't you say anything?" Before Gabriella could respond, Omar interjected, "She has nothing to say. Gabriella is a part of my life now, and I won't let you or anything from the past interfere." Gabriella held Omar's hand tightly for safety as they left the hotel together. Still shaken by her unexpected encounter with Elijah, Gabriella asked Omar how he recognized her ex-husband. He explained that Valentina had shown him some photos of Elijah earlier. After all the confusion that day, Gabriella finally had her dream wedding. She and Valentina moved in with Omar, starting a new life. A few days later, Gabrielle was at home finishing dinner preparations when Elijah appeared again, mumbling something unintelligible. "I won't let that man take custody of my daughter. She's coming with me," he exclaimed furiously. Valentina, who had heard everything from the living room, entered with a determined expression on her face, unusual for someone her age. "You were never a father to me," she said, confronting the man. "Omar is the one who takes care of me and my mother. He is my real father." Gabriella looked at Elijah, who now relied on his mother for everything. Omar demanded his release, otherwise he would not sign the contract. As the discussion escalated, Omar entered the room and slapped Elijah in the face. "I already told you I have nothing more to do with you. Unless you want me to call the police and charge you with trespassing on private property, I advise you to leave now." Elijah withdrew in fear and never returned to harass the family. The days passed and life smiled on Gabriella and Valentina. Valentina shared her plans to study abroad, and Omar supported her without hesitation, promising to do everything he could to help her fulfill her dreams. Reflecting on the past, Gabriella realized how far she had come. "I never thought I could be so happy," she confessed one night, looking at Omar with eyes shining with love and gratitude. "You deserve all the happiness in the world," Omar replied, holding her hand. "And I'll be here for you and Valentina all the time you want." Gabriella had hope for the future, praying that life with Omar would continue to bring this immense joy, that they would grow old together, watch Valentina grow, and maybe one day play with their grandchildren in the garden. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and leave a thumbs up. These other stories will probably touch you as well. Have a nice session. So what do you think about this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion really matters to me. And while you're at it, please subscribe to the channel. It would help me out a lot. But that's not all. I have something else to share with you, so click on the video that's popping up on your screen right now. I'll be waiting for you there.